Welcome to Leonard's Language Lessons. This will be writing lesson number 5. Today's learning targets include: I can recall terms, facts, and rules associated with paragraphs. List the parts of a paragraph in the correct order. And write a paragraph that follows the correct format. To begin, let's think about the following question. What are the parts of our language from the smallest unit to the largest unit? Think about this for a minute. Think about the smallest unit to the largest. What did we start off with? We got a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and then now what are we on right now? All right, well, that would be words. Words are the smallest unit of our language. And then words get a little bit bigger. You've got phrases. A little bit bigger is clauses. A little bit bigger is sentences. And then paragraphs. And then writing pieces. So we are focusing on paragraphs. We have to master paragraphs before we can move on to writing pieces. So let's go back and review these terms. A word is a unit of language consisting of one or more spoken sounds. So a visual we can think of is a single puzzle piece. It functions independently and by itself. Well, then, of course, words can make up larger units such as phrases, clauses, and sentences. So a phrase is going to be a group of words that often functions as a single part of speech. So think about the analogy here of two puzzle pieces. Often you might have two or more words that have been put together, but they're connected and they function as one. Now, something that's important to note about phrases is they do not have a subject and a verb. Contrast that with clauses. A clause is also a group of words, but it does contain a subject and a verb. So think about the analogy. You're getting a little bit bigger here with your clauses and your sentences. They're going to be more like 3 puzzle pieces put together, which we'll see in a few moments. And then lastly, we know that there's 2 different types of clauses, dependent clauses and independent clauses. Dependent clauses cannot stand alone, but independent clauses or sentences can stand alone. So a sentence is going to be a group of words that contains a subject, a verb, and makes sense standing alone. So think of them as 3 puzzle pieces together because there's more and they make up, but they still function as one unit. Now, of course, what we're getting to today is we have sentences that make up paragraphs. So a paragraph is going to be a group of sentences that communicates one main idea. So a main idea is going to be the topic around which a paragraph is organized. Some synonyms for main idea might be the focus of a paragraph or possibly the subject matter. But think about it, it's what the paragraph is about. So a little visual, think about a little spider web or maybe a graphic organizer, and the center topic is going to be the main idea or the central idea, and then the topics around them are going to be your supporting details. So you have to have one main idea for each paragraph. Now, I have a little mnemonic device for you when you're writing paragraphs. There are certain things that a writer should do if you write a paragraph. So think about if you write a paragraph, the I would stand for indent the beginning. The first F in if would be for 5. Write at least 5 sentences. And the last F in if would be format. follow the correct format. So remember, if, indent, 5 formats. So let's talk a little bit about that first one. Number 1, if you write a paragraph, you need to make sure to indent the beginning of the paragraph. Notice how I have indented to visually represent the beginning of a paragraph. An indent is a signal to the reader that the writer is transitioning to a new topic. So that's the importance of indenting. Why do we indent? It's kind of a courtesy to the reader. It lets them know that you are changing topics and kind of gives them a break from one paragraph to the next. Now, the symbol that we'll use for indent is right here. It's 2 sticks kind of with a little C on top. So if you ever see someone write that on your paper, like a teacher or a peer, that's going to be indent. Maybe you forgot to scoot over your first line, or maybe you've written one chunk of text and you need to divide it up. Maybe you started a new main idea and forgot to start a new paragraph. So that symbol can stand for indent or new paragraph. A little mnemonic device for you is think about, give your paragraph a thumbs up. Okay, that's kind of a good rule of thumb to use, is to use your thumb to measure how much to indent. You can kind of think of this little visual like the like sign on Facebook. You want to scoot over your first line about the width of your thumb. Next, we want to think about 5. Write at least 5 sentences. So if you have any fewer than 4 sentences, that's really not going to be enough. You're not going to adequately cover or give enough detail in your paragraph. Your target or the ideal amount of sentences is going to be 5 to 10. That's just right. Any more than 10 is probably going to be too much. And kind of think of it like a run-on where you keep going on and on. Sometimes you can write too much in a paragraph. So your goal is to aim from 5 to 10. And lastly, you want to make sure that you follow the correct format. So format of a paragraph is going to include the topic sentence, the support sentences, and the conclusion sentence. So you can kind of think of, like when you use a program like Microsoft Word, they will often have a format section, and the word form can mean shape or the way something looks or the way something is arranged. So you need to make sure that you follow this format as you write your paragraphs. So let's talk a little bit more about the format here. How can a writer remember the format of a paragraph? Well, I have a mnemonic device for you. Since I like to eat so much, I often compare things to food. So here's your mnemonic device. A paragraph is like a cheeseburger. All right, so I want you to think about that for a minute. How is a paragraph like a cheeseburger? Think about the parts of a cheeseburger and how they might relate to the parts of a paragraph. So here's an illustration of our paragraph. We're thinking about our paragraph format. Let's break it down. Let's look at the top bun. Well, an easy way to remember the top bun, well, that's going to be your topic sentence. That's going to be what you're going to begin your paragraph with. Well, then in the middle of your paragraph, in the middle of your cheeseburger, you're going to have your meat, your cheese, your vegetable, your condiments, maybe even some seasoning in there. Well, that's going to be your support sentences. And then last, you can't have a cheeseburger without the bottom bun, and that's going to be your conclusion sentence. So, a paragraph is like a cheeseburger, and you can see the labeling there. We have our topic sentence, our support sentences, and our conclusion sentence. So let's discuss these a little bit more. Topic sentence is going to be the sentence that states or introduces the main idea of the paragraph. Now, I want you to think about, you want to begin your paragraphs out with a bang. So think about a little firecracker. You want to get the reader's attention, okay? And you want to make sure to avoid poor topic sentences. One of my pet peeves is when students say, I am going to tell you about blank. That's a terrible way to start a paragraph. So think about more interesting ways. Maybe start with a hook, like a quote, a question, a statistic, paint a picture for them. We'll go over a variety of ways that you can do this, but try to get the reader interested in what you're going to be talking about in that first sentence. After you have your topic sentence written, it's important that you write support sentences. So these are going to be the sentences that give specific details that explain or prove the main idea of the paragraph. Now, your minimum amount that you want to have in a paragraph is going to be 3 support sentences. And I have another mnemonic device for you. Well, if a paragraph is like a cheeseburger, then your support sentences that go with your paragraph are going to be like fries. So fries is going to be an acronym for the different examples of support sentences. The F stands for facts. The R stands for reasons. The I stands for interviews. The E stands for examples. And the S stands for sensory details. So let's look into each of these just a little bit further. A fact is going to be a statement that can be proved true by direct observation or by checking a reliable reference source. Some examples of facts can include observations, comparisons, contrasts, and statistics. So think about it. A fact, you can prove it to be true. An observation is going to be a first-hand account of an event or an occurrence. So it's something that you can observe or you can see, but you really want first-hand information, someone that was actually there, whether it was you or someone that you speak with. Comparison contrast, think about a Venn diagram. You've done those before. You want to list similarities and differences between or among 2 or more items. And so maybe you're trying to say that your idea is better than someone else's, then you would use a comparison and contrast. And then lastly, a specific type of fact would be a statistic, which is going to be a numerical fact. It's going to have numbers in it, usually from a study or research. So that might have numbers or percentages. And remember, you can even actually make up your own. If you don't have a study or research, you can do your own little poll or survey on a smaller level. That shows creativity. Now next, you kind of have a contrast between fact and reason, because fact can be proved to be true, and reason is just kind of going to be your own beliefs. So it's a statement presented in justification or explanation of a belief or action. So think about a reason. It's an opinion. It's basically what you think. Now think about this. You don't want all facts in your writing and you don't want all reasons. You want a variety of both of them. An interview is going to be a consultation with a person on a particular topic. For example, an interview could be with an expert, a first-hand witness, or a person with an opinion on a topic. So think about the picture here. We have a person that might be interviewing someone else, maybe for television, maybe for the newspaper, and they want to get maybe what they know about a certain topic, or maybe just what are their opinions on a certain topic. So this is a great way to get some variety into our support, is by having an interview. And remember, let's say you can't actually get an interview with someone. Again, you have that creative license where you can kind of make up the interview as long as it was possible or, it seems realistic. An example is going to be a thing that is characteristic of its kind or supporting a general idea. So an example could be a list, an incident, or an illustration. So think of this visual. If you were organizing your information, you would have a topic at the top, and then you might have some branches down where you list some examples of that broader topic. So if you were to list things, you might have a number of connected items written consecutively. So for example, you would usually have about 3 different things in that list, and that would kind of further your idea. Next, you might do an incident, which is going to be an event or an occurrence of something, maybe a little story or an anecdote that proves your main idea. And lastly, an illustration is going to be an example that serves to clarify or prove something. So an illustration would be much like an incident in that it's a story, but maybe you're making it up. You might say, pretend that this happened or picture this, and then you might explain what happens. So you could use a list, an incident, or an illustration to serve as examples. And lastly, we have sensory details. Think of the root word of sensory. That's sense, your senses. So sensory details is going to be the use of language that appeals to at least one of the 5 senses. So think about, what are the 5 senses? Can you list them? They are seeing, smelling, tasting, hearing, and touching. So let's look at the visual. We have taste, hearing, sight, smell, and touch. As we write, sometimes we have a tendency to appeal to the sense of sight, and we focus primarily on that. But we want to focus on all of the different senses and appeal to as many of them as possible. So if we can do 5 out of 5, that should be our goal, because that's going to be more interesting to the reader. So remember, when we do our support sentences, do fact, reason, interview, example, and sensory details. And lastly, our conclusion sentence is going to be the sentence that restates or summarizes the main idea of the paragraph. So this is going to be similar to your topic sentence, except you want to maybe state it in a way that was different from before. Think about the visual of a very neatly wrapped present. A good conclusion sentence is going to wrap up the paragraph. It's going to make it feel finished. And as we do this, we want to avoid poor conclusion sentences. For example, we shouldn't say things like, that is how, or that is why. That is an ineffective way of concluding our sentence. Therefore, we have to think of a creative way to make it feel finished and that the reader has gotten something from our paragraph. So let's wrap things up. Have we accomplished our learning targets? I can recall terms, facts, and rules associated with paragraphs. List the parts of a paragraph in the correct format. And write a paragraph that follows the correct format. So now we should have the first 2 learning targets done, and now we'll begin to work on writing that paragraph that follows the correct format. Thank you for your listening.